I don't usually do stuff like this, but I'm going to pull back the curtain a little, and I promise you will understand what I mean by the title of this video if you watch it to the end. I would consider myself to be a rational person. In the tech market that I review, I think I have a pretty good idea of how a given product will be received by the public based on a common ideal standard of what makes a good product good. It also means that I, like many of you, judge something based on preconceived notions. If we take a look at a more established market like cell phones, it's easy to say that cell phone A is better than cell phone B for a variety of reasons. This could be software, design, price, or performance, but at the end of the day, they are really just clones of each other with little room left for true innovation. Handheld gaming devices don't really operate like this. With the exception of some first-party devices from Nintendo and Sony, hardware manufacturers regularly come up with designs that are new and represent a radical departure from what we've seen in the past. This brings me to the GPD WIN Max and how my thoughts on it have changed over time. To start this story off, I need to bring you back to the beginning of the year when I first saw pictures of the WIN Max floating around social media. My initial impression of this design was that it was garbage and that it was doomed to be a commercial failure. The keyboard design was bad, the device was too big to hold, the bezels were large enough that you could literally land a plane on them, and the controls were too small and awkward. I actually thought the whole thing was rather funny. How could a company in such a small niche mess up a formula that they have used to make at least two other quote-unquote good handheld devices? I also could not understand how a design this bad got approved in the first place. When you know how much it costs to bring one of these types of devices to market, it's even more astounding that a company so small would take such a big risk when they could have just easily made modifications and improvements to their last successful handheld. Making matters worse, within hours of releasing their first public renders of the device, people already had what I would consider to be improvements on this rather awkward-looking design. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret that you've probably already figured out on your own. Many of the companies that make these gaming devices don't play games, and they don't play games on their own devices. So I figured what we were seeing here in these initial pictures was just a reflection of that fact. That's basically where I left it at this point, and I quickly saw the same opinions that I had formed on my own everywhere on the internet. Fast forward to April when I had a scheduled meeting with GPD. What happened next was rather strange and insightful. Now, meeting with companies here in China isn't something new, and in fact, I've pretty much visited all of the companies that I review products for. When I visit with them, I typically bring a bunch of questions that I personally want to know the answers to, along with some concerns and comments that I've seen online. As I sat down in the office waiting to see the WIN Max, I was surprised when they handed me a very rough prototype that they had removed the battery and backplate from, making it basically impossible to do any meaningful tests on the device. I will say that I came very prepared with a bunch of software on hard drives to do some initial tests on the device in vain. The funny thing is that the whole purpose of the meeting was to test a working device. While I sat there with a cannibalized WIN Max prototype trying to imagine what it would be like to use the actual device, my preconceived ideas about it did not change. It felt very awkward in my hands with internal wires dangling underneath, and it didn't feel comfortable to hold on my lap. At that point, there wasn't an advertised price for the WIN Max, but it was estimated to be between $700 and $800. The whole time I was sitting there with the device on my lap, I was trying to imagine who would buy a mini gaming laptop that has a keyboard that doesn't even work for PC gamers. They couldn't even manage to get the WASD placement correct, let alone the number keys. As one of the GPD employees was running over the list of features of the device, I stopped him when he mentioned eGPU performance to say that I thought it was ridiculous to expect that somebody would go out and buy an eGPU to make their gaming device better when the GPU and enclosure can easily cost more than the WIN Max itself. In any case, that is essentially the mindset that I had leaving the office in April, still thinking that this device was a product with no market. What's more, I was wondering how the device would be depicted by other YouTubers when the campaign launched. Would they gloss over any of their real feelings that they had about the device in order to maintain a good relationship with GPD, or would they be forthcoming and say how they really feel? I told myself that no matter what, I would be honest with how I felt about the device, but I would at least give it the proper amount of time it deserved before telling anyone how I publicly felt about it. I'm always reminded with a conversation that I had with the head of GameKitty when I was getting the 350H to review. He told me that he didn't need someone to say good things about his device and that he wanted my real opinions. He said good is good and bad is bad. You don't need to lie for me if you don't like the product. Within an hour of using the device in the form that I have now, my mentality completely changed. The notion that this design was comically too big to hold while gaming went out the door. With it went the idea that the device would also be too heavy for people to hold, especially since I've seen a baby hold this device multiple times in the last 2 weeks, not to mention that in over 150 hours of testing the WIN Max, 99% of the time was spent holding the device in my hands. As I went from test to test, the WIN Max exceeded all of my expectations. And even though this is a prototype in the realest sense of the word, I was genuinely having fun playing on a device that I thought I would absolutely hate. The controls that I thought were too small weren't. The keyboard that I thought was unusable for PC gaming wasn't. The battery life was good even under full load. And the dual fans didn't make nearly as much noise as I had envisioned. My WIN Max slowly started replacing other devices that I own. I've moved all of my games over from my Win 2. I haven't touched my Switch in weeks, nor have I even had time to charge my i7s. I have even started to produce the videos that you are watching right now directly on the WIN Max because of how easy it is to edit on the go and due to how light this thing is in my bag. I even went out and dropped $500 on an eGPU, even though I told the company directly to their face that I thought it was completely stupid for someone to use the WIN Max tethered to an eGPU in the first place. What's worse, I ended up enjoying using the device more with the ability to quickly upgrade it in this manner. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that I was wrong about the WIN Max. It may not be for everyone, but I love what it can do, and I also love that it's useful for more than just gaming. My full review of the device is going to come out shortly. Good is good, and bad is bad. And the WIN Max is one of the best devices that I've ever had the pleasure of owning. I cannot wait to see what comes next. Happy gaming, everyone. Taki out.